where dumping is found to occur.
I call up Brett Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in support of this bill, the Trade Anti-Dumping and Countervailing Duties Amendment Bill, and this its third reading. There's three things I'd like to cover today. The first one actually is that what brings this bill about is, we had a set of circumstances. The circumstances actually accrued from a natural disaster. So after the Canterbury earthquakes, we determined that it would be a good idea to free up the ease of bringing building materials into New Zealand because of the high volume of construction that was going to be required, that ordinarily would otherwise cause prices to rise. What the opposition don't realise, because they think, and you can hear in their speeches throughout this bill's passage, they think that it was because of the Christchurch earthquake. Well, the Christchurch earthquake is a set of circumstances to which arose the problem. The problem was the volume of construction required and what that would otherwise do to material prices. So in making a legislative change then to allow us to act the way we needed to, we realised that actually here's an opportunity to put a framework in place to allow government of the day to adapt and react or respond to whatever sort of events might be facing whatever part of our industry or economy at a given time. Because it's not just earthquakes or floods. There could be dry seasons that lead to growing issues. There could be any number of things that might occur that could lead to a shortage or a situation where allowing more free flowing of goods from outside of New Zealand would be a good thing for consumers in particular. So what we look at here in the opposition's opposition to this is we see they're saying every time something happens, pass another bill. Get together in Parliament, take up the time, do more legislation. And what that shows us, Mr Speaker, is that they're an issues-based group. They're down in the weeds at a detail level. If you want to be nice about it, we could say they're trying to manage things. Whereas this government, putting in a proactive framework, is showing that we're about governing, not simply managing. The second part I'd like to cover, and it was raised by the Honourable David Parker yesterday, and I think he touched upon it again today actually, and that's showing a failing of understanding of how the processes under the bill would work. In fact, a misunderstanding of how the process works today. Because it was raised particularly yesterday that the passage of this bill, when enacted, it could mean that dumping wouldn't be investigated. Well, that simply is not the case. Because the process today is that if a complaint is made about a suspicion of dumping, that an investigation is undertaken and it is determined whether or not it exists in fact. When this bill is passed, that will remain 100% the same. That if there is a complaint that dumping could be occurring, an investigation is undertaken, it's determined whether or not that is happening in fact, and only then and only then, is it decided whether a public interest test should be assessed. So this does not compromise the investigation into dumping, nor the finding of fact as to whether it is occurring. It simply then gets to a point to say, right, we know it's there, we know we now have a right to take action. Do we want to make an assessment as to whether there's a public interest to set aside the action that we're allowed to take? The third part I'll touch on before finishing is the idea that somehow the minister is responsible for that. And again, that throws a complete lack of understanding of the bill and how the processes that flow from it work. The minister gets to determine, yes, should we have a look to see if there's a public interest in the situation, but it's officials that actually undertake the public interest test. They are the ones that publish the findings of that public interest test. Yep, the minister will make a decision as to what to do, but they'll make that decision with the information in the public domain. So in fact, it's not really the minister that will be determining at their whim whether or not a public interest will apply. It'll be deciding whether to investigate that particular aspect and then making a decision based on official material that's supplied back. So very simply, Mr Speaker, this is a very good bill. It's a bill that shows a governing approach to the country, not a management one, and it's one that I wholeheartedly support, and I commend it to the House.
I call Barry Coates.
Tēnā koe.